Hi, and welcome to the Red Tunic Podcast, a podcast where I look to rediscover what makes gaming fun and enjoyable by having positive conversations with those related to the industry. Today I'm joined by John Szymanski, also known as Ducky Dev, developer of Kyle is Famous, EvoMorphs, contributor to DreadX Collection 2 with Charlotte's Exile. Hi, John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Link?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. So, John, just to get us started, for those that don't know who you are, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I am a mid-20s game developer. Well, janitor turned game developer, actually. I just kind of bump around. I take on directorial roles or I make stuff by myself. Whatever seems to be in front of me is just what ends up happening.
That's awesome to hear. And interesting adage there about the janitor to developer. Did you
Yeah.
do a lot of janitorial development when you were getting ready to go?
There was a period of life in which janitorial development was very much on the list of every day. There is, so I had a job doing web development right out of college, and I just didn't like it. Like in the way where it's like I could totally do this and be perfectly happy, but man, I want to do something else. So I kind of transitioned from that job into an app development position, and then out of that entirely. And I ended up taking a job as a janitor and then another job in the same building as a barista so that I would have extra time to be working on my own projects and stuff, which eventually turned into being able to do game development full time, which I'm very thankful for. That I'm not sure that that always happens that way.
Yeah, and that's awesome that it did work out for you that way. Because I myself, I found myself in a position many years ago where I wasn't happy where I was, and I was, did my best to kind of
Yeah.
just throw myself out there and see what happens. So, in my case, it kind of worked out well for me. And in others, some people it doesn't, but it's good that it worked out for you because, I think everyone deserves to enjoy what they're doing, or at least not dislike what they're doing, if that makes any sense.
Certainly is the goal, isn't it? I totally agree. Yeah.
So I do have a question related to that before we move on really quick for you. Does that mean games like Viscera Cleanup have just hit a little too close to home for you then, seeing as it's a blend of everything?
So thankful that I never had to do anything like you would see in Viscera cleanup. I think the worst thing I ever had to clean up as a janitor. Well, maybe not the worst thing. The most memorable was when I found a big slice of pizza in the urinal because that was my first night doing it, and I was like, man, what kind of place am I cleaning up? Is this gonna happen every night? But there's another one. Maybe this is a little much, but there was another situation, let's say, of some certain things being flung around the bathroom that I happened to be out that day. Somebody else had to clean it up, and it was apparently horrifying. So I was very lucky to escape from that one.
Yes, I think in both of those examples you were very lucky. One because of just how absolutely absurd such a thing is to
Oh, I
find,
know, right? Yeah,
and the other for obvious reasons.
yeah,
Um, okay, so before we get started, before I jump into some of the other questions, I do have some that I would like to ask you,
sure.
mainly because they caused me some mental trauma, and I would like to hold you responsible for this.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, John, is your mother a mother? Mine certainly is a mother, and my mother's mother was certainly a mother. But was your mother a mother?
Oh gosh. I'm just going to say yes. I believe the proper response is I think so, if I remember correctly.
So, as I imagine you understand what's going to happen next, so I'll just keep on
Uh-huh.
going.
Yes.
Beef, mashed or blended?
Uh Generally mashed, blended under some circumstances.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. And finally, do you feel guilty?
Every day, all the time.
And that is appropriate, I think, for especially for the mental trauma you have caused me and I imagine many other people.
The guilt is impermeable. Yeah, it's like a thick cloud that lays across my workstation, thinking of what I've done to the masses.
As it should be. That's very good to know. I hope that you are one day able to find peace and repentance for that.
Yeah, that's the goal, but man, you never know.
So obviously there are other things I'd like to get to, but I do want to focus on this a little more for you. So with Kyle is famous, uh, and I mean this in absolutely the best way possible, but why?
Really
I
good question. Yeah. So I actually have a fairly normal explanation for this, believe it or not. Uh, I I kind of wanted to make the game under the primary impetus idea here is like, if the player wants to mess things up, they're capable of doing that, right? That was like the first design idea where it's like, okay, let's make this story, and then you can play it normal, but then if somebody wants to go off the rails, that's their decision. They can do that. But then that creates this interesting problem in the narrative, which is how am I going to make sure that they're able to mess up, right? Like that means that I've got to give them option to do these horrible, terrible things. And slowly but surely, Kyle became a lot more about the horrible, terrible things and a lot less about the going through your day normally. To the extent where there is exactly one way of going through your day normally and 115 ways of messing things up. So I got a little bit unbalanced there at the end, but I think the game's much better for it.
So I can't speak to if it's much better for it. That's not my place. However, I can say that in my playthroughs that I did, I was thoroughly amused, confused, and uncomfortable.
Yes, 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 yes.
And I absolutely love it because outside of a few things, like some of the sound effects of eating a refrigerator,
Yeah.
um, or your neighbor,
Hmm.
but the sheer absurdity of it and the often confusing and surreal options I was provided with just made me want to want to click through more. And with the E3 for New Blood, or I don't know if it was directly associated with New Blood, I believe it was, where you had Kyle is completely famous, I believe,
Yes.
the complete edition effectively being released. I am very looking forward to being able to purchase that when it comes out, just to feel, just to see really how much more surreal and maddening it can be. So, as I said before, why, but also thank you, because it is absolutely fantastic in incredibly surreal and weird ways.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, the completed. I There was many things that I did not do in the first one in terms of like more minor things like sound design and things along those lines that I didn't do in the first one just because it was meant to be like a really short project that I have greatly fleshed out that should increase the mostly the uncomfortability. Everything else is for normal. I definitely wanted to make it as unpleasant as possible to play through the game, and I will tell you that the sound effects for eating the fridge have gotten a massive update. There's quite a lot more delight to be found in that particular segment. But it's just so much more delightful to go through all of these bizarre little things with Gianni doing his best to narrate them as straight faced as possible, which doesn't always happen. It gets really quite enjoyable in some parts.
And that's I'm super excited to hear that, because like I said, I absolutely enjoyed it, and hearing that there's going to be more um what's the right word, uncomfortable situations makes me even happier, as
Yeah.
my girlfriend really enjoys horror and that genre, and
Uh-huh.
it brought me great delight when I was reading her things as she was trying to have a somewhat serious conversation, reading her what was on the screen or making her read them, and her being made uncomfortable by it and having to leave the room. So
Oh,
it's
that's
I look forward to
excellent.
that.
There's something like the whole thing is, Kyle's famous universe is rubbery, but that doesn't mean that it can't be uncomfortable. Like, it's rubbery in the way where like no permanent damage can ever be done. If it's all cartoony, but that just enables this whole dimension of uncomfortableness that you would never be able to do in a serious manner because it would just be like way too far. Um, Not to spoil much, but like in some of the new endings coming in complete, there's a moment where Kyle stretches open somebody's mouth and dives into their stomach to lick out all of this toxic jam that is inside of them that's been controlling them for evil purposes. And in Kyle universe, that's a funny little aside in an ending. In like a normal universe, that'd be absolutely horrifying, and you couldn't do that. So it makes it a lot more fun to write, I guess, knowing that like everything is ultimately just like cartoony, bouncy. Nobody gets hurt because you can just go off the rails and it's okay.
Yeah, I definitely do know. You are not seeing the sheer look of horror on my face at what you just told me. That doesn't take away from me looking forward to it. I'm just horrified about what else this is going to hold. So thank you for that. And like I said, I'm looking forward to its release so that I can make sure money gets into your hands and you are encouraged to do more of whatever that is.
Or discouraged. Maybe that would be equally beneficial.
It depends who you ask. However, for me, I think encouraged is the right word.
Oh, I appreciate that greatly.
You are very you've earned it. I want to say, it's I believe that's praise that was well earned.
We'll see when complete comes out. You can follow up and tell me if it's too vomitous.
Well, I will definitely do that then for you. So, you did kind of touch on how you got into developing and making games.
Yeah,
However, can you elaborate on that a little more about, what got you into it or what encouraged you or ultimately made you go, this is what I want to do?
sure. Well, I even when I was like very young kid, I always liked making board games. We didn't have like a ton of computer time growing up, and we lived in the country, so we had dial-up internet until I was like 14. Um, so uh, a lot of the stuff that I did was board games because that was more immediately available to do. I didn't even know what a game engine was. And then at some point, my older brother David, of course, he had been programming in QBasic for quite a while, and more recently had picked up this development tool called Game Maker. And had made a couple games in it that he had released online, and a couple people had played them. I thought that seemed pretty cool, so on a whim, I decided to check it out and make something myself because I always liked video games. It's super interesting to me. So I was like, well, I'll just see what it's like. So David showed me what a variable was, and I just kind of tinkered around inside of the engine. If you've ever booted up Game Maker, it's very easy to just like do something small with it if you don't know what you're doing. Uh, so I tinkered around a bit, and I found that it was just kind of a nice little creative outlet um to be able to do something fun instead of just staring at a screen playing a game or something. It was nice to be doing something creative as well. So that was somewhere, I think I was like 15 or 16 when I first started doing that. And it's something just kind of stuck about it. Sometimes you just start doing something and it's like, yeah, I just kind of like to do it more. Um, and I've always kind of had a bit of a business sensibility about it. So my first thought was like, can I make money doing this? Which is so silly. But so my goal was to release a game that I'd be able to make a little bit of money off of because I thought that would just be a really cool thing to do. Um, so I started trying to build an audience releasing like free things, very early development, not very good sort of things. The first one that I remember kind of getting a bit of traction was actually a game I had made with a couple friends called Chromophobia. which is not exactly dead to time, but it's kind of one I always forget about. It did get a little bit of traction. It was kind of the first start of things, but the one that really ended up cementing a bit of like a more permanent following was when I did Rubber Ducky and the Rainbow Gun. That's what my profile picture is that I use everywhere. That's Rubber Ducky. And something about that struck a chord with some people. Maybe in the larger terms of game development, it didn't do very well. But to a teenager making games in his bedroom, a good 10,000 downloads really meant something. Like that was very very meaningful and special to me. Especially because I was charging $1 for the game. You know that was like, hey, I actually did something that people wanted to play. That was kind of cool. Um, that was years and years of after I started doing games, though, because at that time Greenlight was still the thing to get onto Steam, and Rubber Ducky sat in Greenlight for years. I don't even remember how long, but it was a long time before it got through. So by the time I really started thinking of trying to do that sort of thing more professionally, I was at least halfway through college, I think. Um, and I'd gone to college for computer science and game development specifically, but kind of found that balancing doing that and game development on a more professional level was, you'd have to make sacrifices to one or the other. So and also I had released a game around that time with Sumo Revise, which is very notorious. That's got very bad reception, and I was feeling very disheartened from that experience, and rightfully so. The game was not good. Like it I think there was some interesting ideas, but they were not executed well. That's 100% my fault. And I felt like I didn't really know where to go from there because it suddenly made me realize, hey, you can't just do whatever you want and it'll work out. You actually have to understand how people are going to interact with your product. And if they do not have a good interaction, you will slowly but surely be hurting your reputation. So for several years, I didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. Ended up not getting a job doing game development out of college. And years down the road, then suddenly New Blood gave me an opportunity to work on a game as a programmer. And with that kind of a newfound confidence, I was then like, okay, I think I can do another game now. So I made Kyle is Famous. That was the next one I did, and that did way better than I thought it would, and kind of gave me a bit of confidence to be able to start that original dream of being able to do that full time again, and just very gracefully and without me as the impetus, I ended up in some very good situations to be able to demonstrate that after all these years I had enough skills to be able to create something that would be received well generally. We'll see if that keeps up, but for right now, that's kind of where we're at the moment.
And yeah, that's a fantastic story. I use story. I don't think that's the appropriate term, but it's fantastic to hear how you got from point A to point B. And I think a lot of people, myself especially, can relate to the feeling of having that positive reinforcement of, like you said, having the 10,000 people that enjoyed your game enough to give you that dollar
Right.
or to talk about it or what have you, and then have the flip side happen of the negative reinforcement to just really bring you down. And I understand that for a lot of people, myself as well, that can really disrupt what you enjoy doing and your willingness to take that risk again. However, it's really good that you were given the opportunity, and I don't want to say that way because that makes it sound a little negative, but it's good that you found yourself able to take that risk again for your own reasons and for other people having belief in you or what have you. It's just the whole culmination of it all. But it's great to hear that because just like I said, I personally was really impressed by Kyle is Famous from what I've tried of it. I'm looking forward to the next, and just knowing that there are devs that are still kind of doing that kind of stuff and willing to are getting their chances is just a great thing in my mind because I firmly believe that more indie devs are great, and just the games they produce are always a little more unique than you'll see elsewhere. And knowing that chances are being given and earned is just I love to hear about it. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am so grateful that people are willing to take chances on people. It's almost like it's almost like a just an empathetic thing to do sometimes, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's I'm very grateful to Dave and to Dread and everybody else that's given me a chance to kind of find a place doing things more in a more permanent, professional manner instead of just out of my bedroom. You know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And based on your experiences, is there any advice you might be able to share for those seeking to get into the industry or in the industry or what have you?
Yeah, I do have a few different things. First of all, if you are interested in making games and you are not currently making games, you start immediately. If that's really something that you're passionate about, you are going to get to that point only by practicing your skill. Going to college can help. There are good skills that you can learn there, but it is no substitute for just doing it on your own time. I find that often the people that are able to succeed, particularly in indie development, are the ones that kind of ravenously create games almost as like a cathartic experience instead of doing other things like playing video games or watching a movie. Their default will be to spend that time creating something on their own. And I think that's it's a very simple thing, but it's actually maybe one of the most overlooked things is if you want to be good at something, spend time doing it. It doesn't even necessarily matter what training you have. The more you do it, the better you'll be at it. And on top of that, get involved with other artistic disciplines as well. I One of the largest stop blocks to me being able to do good development when I started doing game development was the fact that I had little to no artistic sensibility whatsoever. And you can really see that in some of my earlier games, particularly the ones where I did the art myself. It There's just not a lot appealing going on. And I eventually I ended up taking enough media stuff that that was kind of like half of my degree at college, and that was phenomenal. Like suddenly having that skill of being able to understand, how to create an art style and or just direct other people was revolutionary to me being able to create, appealing things that are marketable as well as like artistically sound, and there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, definitely. And everything you said that, that's I think that's fantastic advice. It makes perfect sense that, uh, to, to just keep doing something because, it's in a lot of ways like working out, what have you. You don't start at the top. You build yourself up. You build the
Yeah.
muscle. You build that in the same way for programming or for making games or what have you. You build yourself up to, like you said, you'll start at a point where certain things are going to be difficult, and whether or not, regardless, and I'm not meaning against you directly when I say this, but regardless of the quality of what you do, the foundation being there can help you get that next foot forward and then the
Yeah.
next foot forward.
Yeah. No, you are spot on with that. I totally agree.
And as well as you talking about the media, the art direction or
Yeah.
what have you, that also makes perfect sense to to I'm going to kind of co-opt it a little bit to to seek to strengthen what you might feel is your weakest part. Um, because like for me personally, I would try and make games where I'd get in the mindset of, oh, yeah, it'd be cool to do this, and I'd hit that same roadblock as you, and I just go, well, I don't, my art's going to be very bad because that's not the type of person I am, despite the fact I have a graphic design degree. Um, it's, so I would, I'd hit that wall and I'd stop. That'd be the end of it. I'd be like, whatever, I'll move on to something else. And I trying to seek that out uh, is, for other people, because I think I'm a lost cause at this point, but, seeking it out to strengthen those weaknesses, whatever those be, is only going to make it, like you said, you're going to get to a point where either you're going to be happier with what you are producing, or able to direct other people to produce what it is that you want.
Right.
So that's fantastic advice. So thank you for that.
Well, I'll certainly say this: by no means are you a lost cause when it comes to doing what you want to do. It is as simple as if you spend some time and energy doing it, man, you can do it 100%. Um, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the graphic design because I tended to maybe go that way a little bit more than visual design myself. But what really started to give me an idea for um, like doing actual sort of reasonable visual design is when I took a 3D modeling course. Something about the process of doing 3D modeling in a very reasonable and straightforward manner kind of it suddenly clicked for me as somebody who had always focused more on the code side of things, where it's like, oh wait, there is a process you can go about to make things artistically nice, and then on top of that process you are able to add in your creative thoughts, but there is actually a process to doing it that will land you in a better spot than if you just kind of try to freehand off of your own skills. Particularly in 3D modeling, it was realizing how important orthographic references, or just reference in general, and then the very reasonable and understandable steps of taking that reference and turning it into a model. It kind of again, yeah, it kind of inspired this idea where it's like, oh, it's actually doable. You just need to have some knowledge about it. It doesn't have to do with like this inherent ability of being able to construct something. Maybe some people are better at being creative than others. Sure, that's just differences in who we are, perhaps. But certainly, like that baseline of just being able to create something good, there are steps to do it, and you can learn them. And I didn't really realize that before, and once that kind of sunk in a bit, it was like, oh wait, I can do this. Like I just need to have some more knowledge about it, and I need to practice some more, and then it'll be possible. So that was a bit of a realization to me, I guess, once I started doing more media design.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. I don't really know if that quantifies as advice, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but thank you for sharing that, because that is a very interesting mindset. And it's a good thing to keep in mind that sometimes all you have to do is try something new or a different way in that same realm, and that light bulb goes off.
Hmm.
Because,
Totally.
sorry, because yeah, like you said, eh, if you were struggling with the art, but the when you realized that there's the process for 3D modeling existed like that, that's I think that's just fantastic that you were able to find that, and hopefully uh, other people are able to find such a thing as well. Because like I said, that light bulb going off is always, oh, I've had it happen for me for a lot of different things, and it's never a bad thing when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's actually very comforting to know that if you struggle with something, there is answers to that, whatever that be. In this case, an art discipline. In another case, a philosophical thought. There are truly answers to things if you spend some time digging around for them. But yeah, if anybody feels like they are like myself was in the past, totally incapable of constructing anything artistically pleasing, there's steps to do it, and if you go and get some training on that, you will end up significantly better at it. So that shouldn't dissuade you by any means. It's very doable.
And yeah, thank you again for that. And hopefully that helps the people that need to hear it, or just in general having that knowledge to share.
Yeah,
So
it's my
John,
pleasure.
I am curious, because you had mentioned that you didn't really have a lot of computer time or game time, especially in the
Yeah.
country where you would have been away from broadband. But did you have a favorite game as a child, and what would it have been?
And many. um, yeah, it kind of so it depends on the scenario, because we didn't until I was maybe slightly 12 or 11 or something. We didn't have a game system at home, because that was about the time where like we started really thinking like, oh, we'd like to be more interested in video games. Me and my brothers, um, but so when you don't have that immediately there, you've got your family computer and your educational games and a couple non-educational games, right? We all grew up with that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
then you've got like the certain places you go to play certain systems. So like my uncle's house was where he played the Genesis, and I had my collection of games that I liked to play there. Or certain friends' houses would have, the N64, and I knew exactly what games they had. So it's like, oh yeah, when I go there, I get to play this game. Um, so there was a lot of games I really liked playing as a kid, but a few of them have kind of still stuck with me, even to this point where if I go back to them, I'm like, yes, this is just as good as it was when I was a kid. This wasn't just like me not understanding. This was a fantastic game. A couple that come to mind is Smash Bros. Melee. Loved it as a kid. I think it's still an excellent game. Shining Force on the Genesis, which is strange because I am not a huge RPG fan, but it's excellent. It's so well put together and holds up very well today. Sonic 2 and 3 particularly, I always liked as a kid, and still find just so much enjoyment in it. And a little bit later down the road, I started playing things like Resident Evil. Resident Evil 4 is fantastic. Still holds up very well today. Resident Evil 1, the remake particularly, is also very good in a completely different way, and still holds up really well. Yeah, I could go on and on. One more though, very important one. Myst. Grew up with that since I was like a very small kid, and I would argue that Myst and maybe Riven. I didn't play that one as much. Are still among the best first-person point-and-click games. They are just excellent and still just as intriguing and delightful as they were back in the day.
yes. I would share that argument with you. I'd be on, your side for that.
Yeah.
Uh, not to try and gloss over your other favorite games, because I agree. They were all fun games. Shining Force, especially, I believe, was one of the earlier JRPGs that kind of made its way to North America. If I'm wrong, I'm
Yeah.
wrong. But it was an interesting one because I remember that I think it started, or at least was a benchmark for a lot of other things for a while, especially on the Genesis.
Hmm.
However, I firmly agree with you with Myst, because around that time, I don't know if there was a lot of other similar games to Myst before it. I know after it there was a good handful, and I remember buying them in packs of 5. For example, one of them was something called Lighthouse, and it was interesting
Dude,
enough.
you know about Lighthouse?
Oh no,
You're
yes.
you're literally like the first person I've ever met that also knows about Lighthouse. That's hilarious.
Um, I am very happy that you react that way.
Yeah, it freaked me out. I was terrified of that game.
Uh, yes, yes. The beginning of Lighthouse was a very weird game. I remember, the bit of puzzling. There was something bad that happened in the lighthouse or in your house. A
Yeah,
demon opens a portal up, or
yeah,
let me rephrase that. In quotes, a demon, because this was a game from the late '90s.
yeah. It was some
So
sort of blobby, spindly sort of thing. I
yeah,
don't remember exactly.
and then you follow it, or you get pulled through to this lighthouse world. I i enjoyed the premise of it. I played Myst with my grandfather. It was something that we shared doing, because he even now, but then especially, he was someone that liked to try and be on top of technology.
Mm-hmm.
He still does that now. A few years back, at the ripe old age of 87, he felt he needed to have several different tablet devices because reasons. One of them include two of them, including the BlackBerry Playbook, I believe it was, just to set the
Whoa.
standard of what it is my grandfather is and was about. But Myst was a game that we enjoyed together, and we would stay up late at night playing it, and all of the everything else that goes along with it. And then when Lighthouse came along, he was similarly interested in it, except that interest died off very quickly because for whatever reason, the game would crash at the exact same spot about an hour and a half in and
Oh.
delete all of its own saves. So
Oh, how frustrating.
exactly. But yes, Mist was like I said, I agree that it was probably one of the best and probably still is in terms of just being the forerunner of that. I'm gonna say genre really because up until that time, I don't think there really were first person point and clicks. They were usually third persons, and now there's several first person point and clicks over
Yeah,
the course.
a genre that Myst popularized and still kind of dominates. It just fell off at some point, and there's been some attempts to kind of revive it, but there's one really important factor that is so hard to get around, which is one of the reasons that those point and clicks worked is because you can navigate the environment so quickly and get to where you're going so quickly. And if that is in any way lost, having these instant transitions before frames, the whole thing bogs down. And it is such a tough barrier to get around. And obviously nobody nowadays wants to buy a game where you're clicking between static images. So it's like it's almost a tough sell of a genre, which is so sad because it's such a wonderful little world you get to explore. Person point and clicks. They're always so abnormal and creative, but yeah, Mist is an excellent example. Still, I think it's a great game.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not going to, I have many strong memories for it for, sentimental reasons as well as actually being just impressed by what was being presented. So yeah, I'm definitely not
Hmm.
going to argue with any of, anything that you'd have to say about it.
Right, right, yeah. I never did really play much of Riven. That was for we even owned it, but for some reason, like I never played much of it. I hear it's even better, but I don't know that for sure. I only played Mist.
Yeah, I can't say much about Riven myself. By the time that we would have been to play Riven, life was a little different, and we didn't get to experience it or attempt to experience it in the same way. So for me, as at least, the magic just wasn't there.
Right. Yeah. Maybe it was. You might be right. Maybe it was a timing thing. Life timing wise. Because certainly by the time we as us three Szymanski boys had our hands on it, we had kind of moved on to other things gaming wise.
Exactly. So I'll ask this because you've mentioned you have multiple brothers.
Mhm.
What makes gaming enjoyable to you? And at any point, from I'd say a sizable family, was it influenced by that family? I'm making hand shapes that make no sense by having a family that also enjoys games.
Yeah, actually, I don't know that this is a sentiment that's shared by my other brothers, but for me, gaming has always been almost solely enjoyable as a social sort of a thing. That doesn't necessarily mean playing multiplayer games, but playing games with other people around who are also, there for the experience is just about the only way that I really end up enjoying playing a game for more than a couple days. Um, so that's a really important aspect of it. I was really sad at the time when local co-op became less and less of a thing. I'm kind of glad to see that now with furthering technology and better internet connections, there's kind of been a bit of a revival in those sorts of game designs. But I think there's something wonderful about a group of people sitting down and playing a single player game together. It's just fun to have an experience together, even if only one person gets to control it. Actually, one of the things that so when I was doing this new version of Kyle, or Kyle is completely famous, we weren't going to have voice acting because what a big job. It's a pretty big story. And at some point, I had gotten the Switch port to a point where I was able to play it on my TV. And I plugged it in and I booted it up, and I was like, if I was in a group of people, I would not want to be here. This would be very boring. And I immediately realized that if I was going to get across this feeling of like being able to collectively come together to enjoy this experience, you have to have a narrator. People need a voice to be able to string them all along at the same time, instead of just this quiet noise in the background as you're, staring at a block of text on the screen. It's not the same, you know.
Definitely, yeah. I can 100% relate to that, as to the multiple points you made there. Especially even enjoying a single player game with a group of people. Like for example, some friends and myself, we for a while really enjoyed playing Grand Theft Auto together, and how that
Hmm.
worked was, and this was the first one by the way, so it was even weirder. But how we did it was one person would go, and when they died we would swap out, so basically hot seat it, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
every death. And we did a numerous amounts of games like that, and so I can definitely understand enjoying that aspect, because at that point everyone's kind of part of the chaos or the experience, and in my
yeah,
case it was usually the chaos because it was Grand Theft
yeah,
Auto or
yeah.
similar games. But the what you were saying about the narrator kind of being the thing that steps it up to be, a communal, something that can be enjoyed as a, communal game or what have you. That I can also definitely understand, especially with the pandemic right now, playing
Hmm.
different games with people. I myself have tried playing games that I previously did enjoy in groups, Cards Against Humanity, for example, and the magic just isn't there when you have to do all of the reading yourself through a screen or from a screen.
Yeah, not the same.
Yeah, exactly. And games that have a narrator, like for example, Jackbox Party Pack games, where they have the narrator for each piece, that I think that's the thing that makes those games work, because otherwise, you're sitting there in silence or hoping that someone in the group is going to take on the role of narration, and that can go either way whether they take it seriously or not. But
Right.
I can definitely understand, you realizing that narration is that step up to make it an enjoyable experience for everyone. So that's, I would say that's a very, good approach to take.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just worth it for the people that it matters to. You know what I mean? I think it's still fun to have a narrator if you're playing by yourself. I think it's still, and Gianni does a phenomenal job, so he really sells the whole thing. But just having it there so that you can play on a TV with a group of friends, I think is more than worth the hassle for me personally. Because then I can pop it out if I've got some people over and be like, hey, goof around with this if you want to. And we can have a good time, other than being that awkward developer who's like, play my game, and then it's not actually very fun because everybody's just reading text on a screen. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And also, I think what really lends itself to the strong for word lends itself for how and why that might work even better for Kyle is Famous, especially, is that they are very short runs. It's not like, you have to sit someone down and you spend 30 minutes. It's, one person can try a run in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then, hot swap it out. But
Yeah,
it lends itself to just being able to rock it through it. So that way it doesn't feel, like you said, stale, as, you have to sit and read something for a few minutes, or have a narrator narrate a scene for 30 minutes or what have you. So I think
right.
that also is a great um, strength to it. That's a weird thing to say. I know. I'm sorry.
No, actually, you've hit a design philosophy on the head. I actually, interestingly, started with the text box size and wrote everything according to that in the game, because I knew that smaller, digestible pieces of narration are just currently the best thing to do. Having this massive bit of text that you're just like willing to get go away so that you can just get to the next part of the story is just not very fun. And having things kind of come at you in this, one or two sentences at a time, gives this greater feeling of pacing, and like you're getting somewhere quickly, and you don't need to spend all this time reading this huge text box. And then if you're doing it with someone, then it's like, well, tell me when you're done. It's like, yeah, everybody's done in like 5 seconds, and you can move on.
Exactly. As well, uh, as well for some of the more absurd things that happen in it, uh, having it happen quickly and you moving on quickly, I think kind of keeps you in a state of confusion and uncomfortableness because it just happens and then you're already on to the next thing. You've eaten the fridge, but now you're banging your head against the locked pantry door or what have you.
Yeah.
So like it's things are just sort of moving. Like you said, the pacing is very nice for that. So you just have enough time to process it, but not enough time to digest it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I totally agree.
Awesome, awesome. Now, John, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. We all have busy days. You've made some time for me today. I don't want to steal too much more of it. However, if there's anything else you want to discuss, a cool game, what else you're doing, or something you feel more people should know about or just be aware of, the floor is yours. As well, please let everyone know where they can find more information about you, which I'll also include in the comments and or the description and everything.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, in terms of where to find me, Twitter and my Discord are the two things that I keep up with by far the most. So if you are a Twitter or a Discord user, either of those places are usually good ways to either chat or see what I'm up to. And yeah, in terms of other things to talk about, well, I've got some really fun stuff coming down the line with MFN, title not yet revealed. This game with the Rolodexer and the horror elements that maybe some people have seen on Twitter. This is kind of an interesting project because it's the first time I've like deliberately played my hand close to my chest on like what it is. Um, but we're getting closer and closer to the point where we can kind of like actually reveal that and be like, yeah, this is what we're working on, which I think it'll be fun. The I don't think I'm like a well enough known developer for that to be like, oh my gosh, sort of thing. But I think the people that have been following up to this point will be like, oh, I get it. That makes sense now. Because there's certainly been little hints of what the game is being dropped on Twitter over time. So that's really exciting. It's by far the largest thing I've worked on. It's kind of like my big chance to do something more than just like a game in my bedroom that Dread XP gave me. So that's very exciting, and I'm really looking forward to that. Also, for anybody that was a fan of monster collecting games when they were a kid, I've been working and Evan, my older brother, have been working on something that I think will really appeal to people like that, called EvoMorphs. So if you grew up playing monster collecting games, I'd highly recommend checking that out and tell us if we're doing a good job of capturing that feeling from your childhood or not. Because if we're not, we want to know. you know.
Definitely. And, there's two things that you have said that I kind of want to quickly follow up on. Like I said, I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I want to make sure I mention this. The the one game you're making, the Untitled game, uh the as I mentioned to you, when I was reaching out to you, the thing that really has me on board, intrigued, um, my attention has been got, so to say, was the gun, was that Rolodex gun, because I don't understand what is happening there, because you're loading a Rolodex in and you're shooting the Rolodex cards. And for those that might listen to this that are too young to know what a Rolodex is, it's effectively it was a roll of it was a circle, a tube that you put a bunch of contact information in and you rolled through it. It was a contact book that you rolled through. So you slap it in the gun and you're shooting the cards out. That's that has my attention to the degree that I am on board with whatever that is. I don't understand it. I don't know it, but I want to see it and I want to participate in that when I can. Um,
Uh, I'll just say, learn your alphabet, man. Education is important.
I have a better idea now. I won't say it, but if that's a fascinating way to go about it, of what you just said as well as a hint. So I look forward to that. That I hope works well for you, like sincerely, because that, like I said, it looks like it's a wild idea, and I want to see it work because I like seeing wild ideas work.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it'll be really fun.
I ho-
Just like as a project, you know.
Mhm, and I hope I'm sure it will be fun, but I hope like I said, I hope it works out for you because I want to see more wild things from developers, and you especially. Like I said, Kyle is famous, had me on board in an uncomfortable way the whole time. This Rolodex gun has me on board. I look forward to whatever else you do. And I mean, like I said, I mean that genuinely because what I've seen previously from you are just wild, and I want to see more.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I hope to be able to continue producing things that people are excited to see what's up with them. That's certainly the goal, is to be interesting. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Being interesting and having interesting project stuff, I think is fantastic. As well, you mentioned the game you and your brother Evan are working on EvoMorph. That
Yeah.
for those that don't know, that looks like it'll be a neat approach to the monster collecting. I was struggling not to say Pokemon type, but that
Well,
looks like it'll be a
monster
sorry.
collecting as a whole,
Yeah,
that whole sort of thing that happened in the late 90s, where suddenly, monster collecting was the big deal, kind of want to just tap into that excitement and exuberance that we all had for those sort of things when we were kids.
exactly. And I do want to say from the screenshots that it looks like it's going to be, you collect monsters or what have you, and then you are battling them in what looks like a tactics grid layout. And if that's the case, I think that's a real unique approach and take on it. And I look forward to seeing how well that works because, a lot of, Fire Emblem got a resurgence, or I shouldn't say a resurgence. Fire Emblem managed to get more people interested in the tactics games and over the last few years.
Hmm.
And I think, having more tactics games with interesting concepts, I think, that's a great genre that's not really fully tapped.
Yeah, I agree. I've only found just a small handful of them that I felt really expounded on things in an interesting way. But when I was a kid and I was playing my little monster collecting games, the first thing that always came to mind was, hey, I really want to move these guys around, individually, instead of just like, yeah, having a turn-based combat system or something. And so it was almost like an obvious choice when we started thinking about doing one of these games, where it's like, yeah, we want to have, and also, it's more strategic. It's something that like an adult can kind of appreciate more, because there's a lot more systems that are interplaying when you have a spatial dimension in play. And we're taking a lot of inspiration from things like Shining Force. We're taking a lot of inspiration from, if you are a board game player at all, from things like Gloomhaven and similar RPG board games. Trying to get the strategic strategy element down to a degree where it's like enough to be fun and engaging, but not so much that you need to know every single mechanic, or else you don't have a chance. That wouldn't be very fun. But yeah, really the whole concept is just, what did we want as kids to be able to do with these games, and let's just try to do that, and then add our flavor and our twist onto it to kind of make it into our own thing.
Definitely, yeah, and like you said, everything you said there that makes perfect sense. And yeah, like I said, I look forward to it because it's a unique approach, and it's a unique approach that you would have thought by now would have been a little more obvious that someone else would have tried. And that's not, a shot against anyone else or you or what have you, but just an actual statement of I'm surprised it took this
Yeah.
long for someone to go, why we've wanted this, why don't we just do this?
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of surprised too. And the only thing I can come up with is these sort of games are kind of like abnormally either time consuming or they require a lot of maybe more systematic knowledge of programming. And this is not to say that there are not a lot of people that are totally capable of doing that. It's just like maybe a little bit more specialized in some certain areas. So it requires a bit more pre-planning to get things going. Certainly like codified, but also like with all your character designs and stuff like that. It I don't know. I'm also surprised though. It's not at all outside of the bounds of what people can and do. That is phenomenal, and it's kind of seems like I think everybody wanted to have a game like this when they were a kid. So why not make one? I don't know.
Exactly, and like I said, I'm looking forward to it. When I was looking into it, like that the tactics layout or approach, that's really what sold me on it. Was the that is it's what everyone's wanted for years, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm very excited that someone has finally done it, and I'm also excited to talk to someone that is part of the people that are finally deciding to do it.
Yeah, we'll see how it works out. But we've been iterating and iterating and iterating until we feel like we've got a good thing. So we feel like we're doing our best at least, and we'll see if the best is good enough. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I hope for the best for what you're working on for you and your brother, and for you and your solo projects and what have you. Because like I said, I what you've done, I've enjoyed so far, and I fingers crossed that you continue to see success and get to make more things that you enjoy, but also other people will enjoy.
Well, thank you. Yeah, God willing, we'll be there hopefully for a while.
Hopefully, yes. I'll definitely keep my fingers crossed for you. Now, John, like I said, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So, if there wasn't anything else you wanted to make people sure of, I'll let you get back to your day.
I think that's all I had in mind.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks again for making time to have this conversation with me, and thank you for joining us on the Red Tunic podcast, as well as a special thanks to Ronald Jenkins for the use of music from the title track "Road Steep." And if you like this podcast and want to support it and help it grow, please subscribe to receive the latest episode, and be sure to share it with those you think might also enjoy it. Stay tuned next time where I talk to someone. Bye now.